When Karoline Leavitt boarded the flight, dressed sharply and carrying herself with quiet confidence, no one suspected the storm that was about to unfold. Moments later, a flight attendant tapped her shoulder and delivered the shocking news. She was being removed from her business class seat. No explanation, no apology. What they didn't realize was that Karoline wasn't just any passenger, and she wasn't going down without a fight. As Karoline stood in the narrow aisle, stunned but composed, whispers began to ripple through the cabin. A few passengers reached for their phones. One quietly filmed. The flight attendant's smile faltered as Karoline pulled out her phone to call a lawyer, but someone much higher up. Within minutes, the captain received a discreet message from corporate. The cabin crew exchanged nervous glances. Something was clearly wrong. Karoline didn't raise her voice, didn't threaten. She didn't need to. By the time the plane touched down, news of the incident had already started trending online. Major airline executives were pulled into emergency meetings. PR teams scrambled to draft statements. But the real shock came the next morning. Karoline didn't sue. She didn't rant on social media. Instead, she walked into the airline's headquarters without an appointment and straight into the CEO's office. What she said next changed everything. The receptionist didn't ask questions. She simply stood aside, as if she too felt the shift in the air. Karoline's heels echoed down the polished hallway, each step deliberate, unhurried. Security watched from a distance, uncertain whether to intervene. No one moved. Inside the glass-walled office, the CEO looked up, confused at first, then pale. She didn't sit. She placed a single envelope on his desk, pristine and sealed. It wasn't a lawsuit. It wasn't a threat. It was something far worse. Outside, a storm was building figuratively and literally. The airline's inbox flooded. Press inquiries, board members calling from different time zones. An emergency internal memo had leaked. Her name was in it. Somewhere, a pilot turned on the news. A politician paused mid-speech. A stock ticker flickered red. Karoline left the building without a word. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. The real turbulence hadn't even begun. By dusk, 3 executives had submitted their resignations. Not because they were guilty, at least not yet, but because they knew what was coming. The envelope Karoline delivered wasn't just leverage. It was a blueprint. A quiet, calculated unveiling of something the airline had buried for years. Old emails, signed approvals, passenger complaints swept under layers of legalese. But more damning than the documents was the connection she exposed: names tied to government contracts, backchannel deals, and a pattern of discrimination so systematic it had become invisible. The boardroom lights stayed on all night. Meanwhile, Karoline disappeared. She didn't return home. Her social media accounts went dark. Former colleagues reached out voicemails unanswered. Even the reporters who once hounded her now treaded carefully, unsure if she was a whistleblower, a mastermind, or something else entirely. But she wasn't hiding. She was waiting. Somewhere offshore, on a private server, a countdown had begun. A file labeled cabinpressure.exe sat quietly, encrypted but prime. The final boarding call hadn't been made yet, but when it came, no one would be ready. Day 3. News anchors wore polite smiles, but their eyes flickered with unease. An emerging corporate mystery, they called it. But the truth was, no one knew who Karoline really was not anymore. The FAA called for an unscheduled audit of the airline. A senator quietly withdrew from a re-election campaign. And in a dim conference room in D.C., someone whispered her name like a warning. Across the Atlantic, a drone buzzed over an abandoned airstrip. Its camera caught something the public hadn't seen yet. An unmarked plane, tail number wiped, tucked behind a decaying hangar. Minutes later, the footage uploaded itself automatically onto a private channel labeled TR-1A. Someone was watching. No one spoke her name at the airline now, not even in closed-door meetings. One intern made the mistake of mentioning the incident and was escorted out within the hour. Still, they waited. Every ping of an email, every blocked call, every unmarked envelope that arrived at corporate. And then came the flight manifest. She'd booked a ticket. Same airline, different route, no upgrades, no special requests, just a seat in row 17 economy. It wasn't a return. It was an invitation. The day of the flight arrived with rain slashing against the terminal windows, as if the sky itself had been warned. Gate 42 was unusually quiet. The boarding crew acted normal but overprepared. More supervisors than usual lingered nearby, uniforms freshly pressed, smiles forced. Karoline arrived 10 minutes before final call. No entourage, no laptop, just a slim leather carry-on and a paperback book with the cover torn off. She didn't look at anyone. She didn't need to. They looked at her. The scanner beeped. Her ticket passed. She walked down the jet bridge slowly, every step measured. Cameras didn't flash, but someone was filming covertly. Somewhere in the back, a man in a window seat was already typing a draft article, unsure if it would be published or buried. Row 17A. Middle seat. No one sat beside her. The flight was oddly underbooked. As the engines began their low roar and the aircraft pulled away from the gate, the intercom clicked on, but it wasn't the usual voice. It wasn't the pilot. A pause. Then static. Then, "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. You may feel some unexpected turbulence ahead." Several passengers looked around, confused. Karoline closed her eyes. 3,000 feet in the air, something pinged in a secure inbox in Geneva. It had begun. At 10,000 feet, the fasten seatbelt sign chimed off. But no one moved, not even the flight attendants. Karoline reached into her carry-on, pulled out a slim black device no larger than a phone, and tapped once. The screen-lit-up bar of signal was all she needed. In the cockpit, an alarm blinked for half a second. Then silence. The plane continued as if nothing had happened. Back at corporate headquarters, every monitor flickered. Not crashed, just changed. A message displayed across all screens, conference rooms, even personal laptops left on idle. This isn't about a seat, it's about the system. Then came the files. Hundreds. Memos, bank records, flight logs, audio recordings, evidence of discrimination, fraud, cover-ups spanning years, other airlines, government regulators, even the names of those who thought they were untouchable. Karoline's face didn't appear once, but her fingerprints were everywhere. On board, a quiet ding announced drink service. She didn't order anything. She just watched clouds drift by, her eyes calm, unreadable. By the time the plane landed, news outlets were in chaos. Half the board had resigned. A Senate committee announced a formal investigation. The CEO's home was surrounded by reporters. Karoline exited with the other passengers, unnoticed. No one stopped her. No one could. She stepped into the arrivals hall, disappearing into the blur of the crowd. No fanfare, no final statement, just a whisper left behind, carried on message boards, chat rooms, hushed texts between insiders. She rewrote the rules at 30,000 feet.